Today on Robb's Garage, we're going to replace the motor mounts on the 2016 Range Rover Sport. Welcome back to Robb's Garage, where we maintain, repair, track, and upgrade the likes of BMWs, Corvettes, Ferraris. Working on the Range Rover today. I've had a couple symptoms I'd like to share with you guys before I get into the motor mount replacement. That way you know whether or not you have a bad motor mount. First thing is vibration. When I first start up the vehicle, you can feel it's like vibrating a little bit more than normal, a lot more shaking in this particularly in the steering wheel. When I would be at a stoplight and I'd step on the throttle, hear a clunking sound coming. You could hear something on the driver's side. It happens to be a bad driver's side motor mount, but I'm gonna replace them both. But the other thing, and this is what I want to get on video here, is when I put it in reverse, you can hear a grinding sound. That's not good. I think it's the way that the engine is engaging with the transmission. For this job, I use genuine Land Rover parts. You're gonna order two of these, part number LR105970. There are aftermarket parts out there. These will cost you a little bit more. What I find is these parts are gonna last a lot longer, save yourself some time and labor from having to replace aftermarket motor mounts in the near future. I purchased these on FCP Euro, which has a lifetime guarantee, by the way. Here's the tools you're going to need to complete this job, starting with the jack. This is a 3.5 ton jack, low profile. You may not need something so heavy duty, but it's got to be strong enough to support the engine, as well as some wood. It will, prevent the jack from ruining the oil pan where we're going to lift the motor. Pair of jack stands for safety, several wrenches in the mix here. Ignore the open end piece. It's the box end that's got a ratchet. It's ratcheting and swiveling. This came in very handy for treating in the tight crevices where I couldn't just use the regular 3/8 drive 10mm socket. So highly recommend something like this. If you don't have that, maybe a short stubby and deep socket 10mm, but it'll save yourself a lot of time if you have a swiveling ratchet like that. 7mm nut driver and a 15mm 1/2 inch drive to get the under trays off. You're going to need a series of 3/8 drive extensions. I'll get to more in a moment, but at least a couple short ones and definitely some long ones. Flathead screwdriver and a pair of magnets. These came in very handy as I lost several tools during this job. I had to retrieve them from the engine bay. Now, I mentioned extensions. You're going to need a few long 3/8 extensions. You can get one really long one. I tried to use two, semi-long ones together so I could get a little flex in it. That's mandatory. What's not mandatory, but will definitely help, and I'll give you an alternative. Here I've got a 3/8 drive swivel with an adapter to a half drive swivel and a 21mm half drive socket. In lieu of these pieces from here to here, you could get a 20mm clawfoot socket. That would do the job, I believe. According to the shop manual, it's what you really should use. I use this instead because I couldn't find a 21mm claw foot. So I do think this worked okay, but if you have a claw foot, even better. Definitely gonna need a torque wrench. And I used a drill, or you could use an impact driver to help take off some of the bolts on the under tray. First thing we're gonna do is get it in off-road height. So hold your air suspension button, put it in neutral, shift it into low, back into park, and that's going to lock it in place for us. So when we're underneath the vehicle, we should have enough room to maneuver and it won't lower down on us. But for good measure, I'll put some jack stands underneath just in case. Halfway through the job, I realized I need a little bit more room. So with the jack stands underneath, what I did is I went and touched the air suspension system and lowered it. And once the suspension recognizes it's hitting something, aka the jack stand, it then raises up and goes into a higher extended mode. So instead of being 35.5 inches from ground to the bottom of the wheel well right here, you get 36 inches by doing that. Then lock it in place. All right, in order to replace the motor mounts, we've got to lift the engine up, slide the old one out, put the new one in. And so to be able to be prepared to lift the engine, you've got to do a few things. We've got to take the engine cover off here, but then this whole air intake, we've got to remove and lift it out. And possibly we may also have to take this radiator or this fan shroud. We may have to remove that as well. We'll find out when we get into it. Loosen these clamps on the air intake. Takes a 7mm nut driver on there. Next one was over here. Now we got a 10mm bolt here. Take off it. Looks like it's kind of like a bracket. Attaches it from that bracket under there. Already kind of slid these coolant lines off that they just kind of press fit onto this. There's one here and then there's two over here. See, I just got to pull them off. Next we've got a 7mm hose clamp again. This time it's on like the throttle body. So we're going to loosen that up. I'm starting to pull the intake off the throttle body. And then underneath here, there is, it's really hard to see, there's a breather pipe here. I'm going to squeeze the sides. There we go. Now, this is going to come all the way out. Ah, look at that. Okay, next we need to remove this top fan shroud that covers the fan, because as the engine is lifting up, there's a chance that the fan underneath here is going to hit that and run out of room. So just to avoid anything breaking, there's a screw down here, and what we're going to do is just rotate it that so it's like pointed like 90 degree, and then we'll start working this shroud out. Lift it up, kind of an up and out like that. Okay, as you start to pull the shroud off, there's like a rubber grommet here we don't want to lose, so grab that. All right, it was a little difficult to get that get this side out. I don't want to break the plastic. It looks a little brittle, and we discovered I really don't need to, because as long as the shroud is up, loose like that, it's got plenty of room for the fan to come up as we elevate the engine. So we're just going to leave it loose like that. Should be fine. Over here on the driver's side, we're going to have to disconnect this steering arm right there. It's an E12, eTorx 12. Take note of the position of the marking from the factory. See that green line? And my steering wheel is completely straight. Need a really long extension to do this, just to get in there. See that? A few extensions, rather. Right, now you can kind of see where I slid the steering shaft out. It's separated there, so we can get it out of the way. Now we need to come underneath the vehicle, remove the main skid plate. I think there's about 11 bolts. We've got 1, 2 in front, 3, 4, 5 in the middle, and 6, 7, and I think 4 in the back there. Now I got the main skid plate removed. We're going to remove the secondary skid plate that covers the transmission. I think there's just 4 bolts there in the corners. Underneath the engine, on the passenger side, you can see this ground wire here. What we want to do is remove the 10mm bolt on this side of the ground wire, the left side there, so that ground wire comes loose, which will then give us access to that bolt right underneath it. You can see there on the left-hand side, there's 4 10mm bolts securing the motor mount, and then a 21mm bolt up top that secures it to the engine itself. So let's remove that ground wire, loosen all these up, And then we're gonna put a jack underneath the oil pan with a piece of wood, like a wood block in between. We'll raise it up, and that should give us access to pull that motor mount out. We removed the two in the back from the bottom, but it was really hard to get to the front one. So I'm gonna use this long extension with a 10mm socket and see if we can't try to get these loose on the front. There we go. So we got access to it. And let's try the one next to it. Yep, so you can actually reach all of them from up top with a really long extension if you want to. Okay, so here's what we've discovered is it's actually easiest to get most of these bolts from the top using a really long extension and 10mm socket. It's not difficult to reach most of them. I think the one in the back on the left hand side of the screen here, from the driver's side anyway, you have to kind of reach from underneath, but the real difficult one is the one in front on the left hand side, which you can't even see in this video here, or maybe barely, I don't know. What we're going to try and do is we've removed the top nut, the 21mm top nut, from both motor mounts. We are now going to try and lift up the engine with the jack here and see if we can't get better access to that one hidden 10mm bolt. Didn't have a hard time really getting it on the passenger side. We were able to get the two front ones from up top and the two rear ones from the back. The 21mm nut we're able to get from up there. But for some reason, this one is kind of hidden. There's something sticking out like a coolant pipe or something. I can't really tell what it is. There's no room to really see there. So we're going to try and lift the engine up now that it's disconnected from the motor mounts, raise it up with the jack, hold it there, and then maybe get access. If not access from up top, certainly from down below. We have a 3.5 ton jack. You may not need something that heavy duty, but you're going to need something that's strong enough to hold up the motor. 2 pieces of wood, because you don't want metal on metal with that aluminum oil pan. Okay, we have a jack raised underneath, and you can see that the engine is now high enough over the motor mount where you can start to move it and get it out. So I mean, probably have to do this off camera, but the idea there is lift up the motor high enough you can lift the mount out. So Mike is up top getting that nasty 10 mil we couldn't get to without jacking up the engine. So now you can see there he is working his Mike magic. He's getting it from top. Meanwhile, I'm removing the other 10 mil bolts. And on the passenger side, already slid the new motor mount in and hand tightened all of the bolts, the 10 mil bolts back into the frame here. According to the shop manual I read, they said you should replace all these bolts because they're aluminum. But I talked to Land Rover and they said they reuse them. The dealership, I went to buy them and they said, no, you're wasting your money. You can reuse them, just put some Loctite on. This ratcheting 10 mil wrench here really came in handy to tighten these down a little bit after I got them hand tightened. This is unconventional because the instructions that I've read, people try to do one side at a time. You just keep one side mounted down and jack up the engine and we'll just kind of tilt it. We're doing both at one time and trying to prove that this method would work. We'll see. On the driver's side here, I found it was actually easier to remove than the passenger side. If you have it up high enough, you can just kind of pull it to the side. And it's going to push on a hose there and it'll just slide right out sideways. Still moving. Compare that to a brand new. Look at this. Zero play. Should be solid. And this is just moving. And the driver's side is just garbage. That's that clunking sound. Remember I said at the beginning how you diagnose if this is what you need to replace? Look at that. Just came right out. If you hear a clunking sound upon hard acceleration, you know, from a standing start, likely going to be this bad boy on the driver's side. But if you're going to replace one, I suggest doing them both. I talked to Land Rover and they said, nah, you can just replace the driver's side. I was like, yeah, look at that. I'm glad I'm doing both. We got all the bottom nuts just loosely tightened and then slowly lowered the jack down, and discovered that if you're going to do both sides at the same time, you really need two people, because one person needs to kind of pull back the stud on the top of the motor mount there, and up on top. You got to kind of pull it into the hole. Obviously not while the jack is being lowered, but it takes a little bit of work. We appear to be lined up. So moment of truth. And I just kind of pulled it into the hole a little bit. Mike, go ahead and slowly lower it. Let's see. There it goes. We're good. Take her all the way down. For all you haters out there that think you can only do one set at a time, check that out. So the way that it works is it's a torque pattern. The torque spec is 40 Newton meters on these lower bolts. It's 110 on the top mount nut. We'll do that last. On the 10 millimeter bolts, you want to do outside front, and then inside rear, outside rear, and then inside front. So we did the outside front first. Now we're doing the inside rear that is normally blocked by that battery cable, remember? What we discovered is we had to use a wobble on this to get it properly torqued. So now it's torqued, we're gonna put the battery cable back on and proceed with doing the outside rear and then the inside front torque, and then we'll move to the driver's side to torque down, which is gonna be harder because I don't know how we're gonna torque that front one. That's difficult to get to. So what we did is tightened down the passenger side and then lifted the engine up again from the oil pan with wood blocks, just enough to where we could reach that front inside 10 millimeter bolt, and we're working on trying to tighten that down. Then we'll torque it and we'll drop it back down and put the top nut on. But you see we didn't raise it too high, just high enough to where we could reach that bolt, but still the stud for that top mount is still within the hole there. But using a wobble, you can actually get to the three most difficult bolts here on the driver's side and torque them down properly. But I'll tell you, it's a lot easier as a two-man job, because Mike could be up top, doing the torque, and I could be down below making sure it's held steady on the bolt. Working down the top nut, and this is where having two people definitely makes it easier, because we got a long extension here with a wobble on the end, 21, well, I can't even get a good focus there, 21 millimeter socket, and I was able to kind of pull it right down onto it. Mike was able to be up top and torque it to 110 Newton meters. To torque the 21 millimeter nut on the driver's side motor mount, you cannot reach it really from up top unless you have a crow's foot, a 21 millimeter crow's foot that you can use with a long extension and a torque wrench. So I said at the beginning, I created this funky contraption here. It's a 21 millimeter half-inch drive socket with a wobble and then an adapter down to 3/8 because I couldn't get a half-inch drive torque wrench underneath the Rover. So I got an adapter down to 3/8 with another wobble and then two 3/8 extensions onto a 3/8 inch torque wrench. And that's what it took me to be able to torque down the driver's side top nut on the motor mount. Now, I'm not a certified mechanic. I can't guarantee that it's really reading 110 Newton meters. I mean, it measured that, but with all these extensions and wobbles, a little chance that maybe it's not 100% accurate, but I feel like it's better than I could get just torquing it by hand. Connect that bolt, I think it's an E12 Torx, to your steering column and compare it against the picture you should have taken at the beginning. It shows the direction of the markings to make sure it's positioned in it correctly. I will say I felt it was, again, helpful to have a second person, because I could sit there and hold the steering column in place, and Mike could come up from up top and put the bolt in for me. Congratulations. If you made it this far, then you probably don't need any instruction on how to wrap up. You just reinstall the under trays in reverse order. Likewise, put the fan shroud on. Don't forget about that rubber gasket over there. Be very careful pushing this back on and getting that screw in the right direction so it's held in place. And then install the air intake. I just thought, though, I would give a couple pointers on things I learned trying to reinstall this. First of all, I focused on the throttle body itself and trying to get, you know, a clean fit, nice, secure fit over the throttle body. And then I connected that PCV or breather valve or whatever it is, which you can't even see now. It's back up in there. Pretty easy to connect once the throttle body is connected. Then I tightened down the clamp back over here, right there, that goes on the throttle body. And when I remove my nut driver, I lost the 7mm socket. So again, that magnet really comes in handy, seeking in, you know, small crevices to get out your tools that you drop. Next up, I then, you know, connected the coolant hoses here. They're just a press fit. And then lastly, tighten down the clamps on the sides and the bolt on the back here at 10mm. Just take your time. Don't over tighten. This is all plastic stuff. So we're gonna throw the engine cover back on and let's see if it works. Take it for a test drive. My raggedy Robb's Garage t-shirt, and so far it feels good. I don't hear any play. Steering's great. I don't hear any thunking or clunking. Let's do a standing start here. Give it some fuel, make sure it's around. Here we go. Listen to that kitty roar. We have all 510 horsepower back. I hope you guys found that beneficial. It cost me $537 for the genuine Land Rover motor mounts. Got them from FCP Euro. As I mentioned, they've got a lifetime warranty. They will definitely last, from all I've read, longer than any of the aftermarket options out there. So why go through the headache of having to replace them? Again, I got 125,000 miles out of the original. Dealership quoted me $2,197. I will say that it was a big job to tackle, but I don't even know what I'm doing, and I could do it. So hopefully you guys found that beneficial. If you did, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I got a lot more Range Rover content coming. I appreciate you watching. Thanks for your support, and I'll see you on down the road.